Puppy opening. First 30 seconds. I stood at that airport transfer desk in Cabo San Lucas watching my son's face drain of color as the representative said those words. "I'm sorry, sir, but this reservation shows as canceled due to non-payment." What they didn't know, what my daughter-in-law Jessica had just screamed to an entire airport terminal, was that I had paid for everything. All $11,847. And 30 minutes before our plane took off, while they were settling into their first-class seats that I'd bought, I removed my credit card from the booking. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, because what happened next changed everything. My name is Margaret Sullivan, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 68 years old, and I live in a modest 2-bedroom house in Lakewood, just outside Denver, Colorado. Before I tell you about that moment at the airport, the moment I finally stood up for myself, I need to take you back 6 months. Because that's when this whole thing really started. It was a Tuesday evening in late January, and I was sitting in Linda Chen's living room for our weekly book club. We were discussing Educated by Tara Westover, and I remember the exact moment my phone started buzzing because we'd just gotten to the part about family loyalty versus self-preservation. The irony wasn't lost on me later. "I'm sorry, ladies," I said, glancing at my phone screen. "It's Daniel. He never calls on Tuesdays." Linda gave me that look, the one that said she already knew this wasn't going to be good news. Linda and I had been friends since our teaching days at Roosevelt Elementary. We'd both retired 5 years ago, both lost our husbands within a year of each other, and both knew each other's children well enough to see trouble coming. I stepped out onto Linda's front porch. February in Denver means cold, and I wrapped my cardigan tighter as I answered. "Hi, honey. Everything okay?" "Hey, Mom." Daniel's voice had that quality to it, the one he used when he wanted something but was trying to sound casual. I'd heard it plenty of times since he married Jessica. "Yeah, everything's fine. Great, actually. Really great." I waited. After 33 years of being his mother, I knew when to wait. "So, Jess and I have been talking and we're so burned out, Mom. I just finished this huge project at work, like 3 months of 16-hour days, and Jessica's been putting in crazy hours at the marketing firm. We barely see each other anymore." "I'm sorry to hear that, sweetheart. That must be hard on both of you." "It is. It really is." He paused, and I heard Jessica's voice in the background, sharp and insistent, though I couldn't make out the words. "So we were thinking we really need a vacation. Just to reconnect, you know. Get away from everything." Here it comes, I thought. "That sounds wonderful, Daniel. You two should definitely take some time for yourselves." "Right, exactly. So there's this amazing resort in Cabo San Lucas, Casa del Mar. It's all-inclusive right on the beach, and the reviews are incredible. Jess found it, and it's exactly what we need." I looked through Linda's window at the book club ladies all watching me with concerned faces. They knew. Somehow they all knew. "That sounds lovely," I said carefully. "It is. It's perfect. The thing is, Mom—" Another pause. Another muffled exchange with Jessica. "The thing is, it's expensive. Like really expensive. With the flights and everything, we're looking at almost $8,000. There it was. "And with the wedding debt we're still paying off, and Jessica's car payment, and just everything." He trailed off, letting the silence do the asking for him. I thought about the envelope in my desk drawer at home, the one with Bob's life insurance papers, and the letter he'd written me before his heart attack, when neither of us knew he had only 3 months left. "Maggie," he'd written in his careful engineer's handwriting, "this money is for you. Live life. Be happy. Don't just save it all for a someday that might never come. How much do you need, honey?" "Mom, no. I can't. I mean, I wasn't asking you to—" "Daniel, how much?" "The thing is, it's not just 8,000. If we want first class, which Jess really thinks we should do because it's a 6-hour flight, and how much total, Daniel? Around 12,000. Maybe a little less. But Mom, seriously, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering." The words came out before I could stop them, and I immediately felt Linda's disapproval radiating through the window. "You're my son. If this is what you need, then I want to do this for you." I heard him exhale long and relieved. "Mom, thank you. Really, thank you so much. This is going to be amazing." "You're welcome, sweetheart." "Hey, so—" His voice changed again, got careful. "Jess was thinking, would you maybe want to come with us?" My heart actually lifted. Despite everything, Despite the dinners that had stopped happening, despite Jessica's little comments, despite feeling pushed to the margins of my son's life, I felt hope bloom in my chest. Really? Yeah, I mean it's a big resort, plenty of space, and it would be nice to spend time together, you know. I would love that, Daniel. Awesome. Let me just hang on. Muffled voices again. Jessica's sharp and Daniel's placating. When he came back, his voice was tight. Jess thinks it's a great idea. Really great. She's excited. Even then, even hearing the lie in his voice, I told myself it would be okay. This would be our chance to bond. Jessica and me away from the stress of daily life. We'd finally connect. We'd become the family I'd always hoped we'd be. I'll book everything tomorrow, I said. First-class tickets and the resort. You're the best mom. Love you. Love you too, honey. I hung up and stood there on Linda's porch, Denver's cold wind cutting through my cardigan, and I knew what Linda would say. I knew what Bob would have said. But Daniel was my only child, and after losing Bob, he was all I had left. When I went back inside, 7 pairs of eyes looked at me with a mixture of pity and frustration. Don't, I said, holding up my hand. Just don't. Linda set down her wine glass. You said yes to something you shouldn't have, didn't you? He's my son. What else can I do? You can say no, Maggie. That's what you can do. But I didn't say no. I never did. And that was the problem. I couldn't sleep that night, so I did what I always did when my mind wouldn't settle. I went up to the attic. Bob and I had bought this house 34 years ago, right after Daniel was born, and the attic was where I kept everything I couldn't bear to throw away, but couldn't keep seeing every day. Bob's clothes, his engineering books, the model trains he'd been building with Daniel before he died, and boxes of photos. I pulled out the album from Daniel and Jessica's wedding. 2 years ago now, though, it felt like a lifetime. I needed to remember how we'd gotten here. 2 years earlier, the engagement party and I'd spent 3 weeks preparing for their engagement party. 24 hours a day at Roosevelt Elementary had taught me how to manage big groups, how to make something special on a budget, and how to make people feel welcomed. I'd made 3 kinds of appetizers from scratch, decorated my living room with fairy lights and flowers, and invited 40 people, friends, family, Daniel's colleagues. The party was supposed to start at 6 p.m. By 6:30, everyone had arrived except Daniel and Jessica. By 7 Huzzur's, people were getting hungry, asking when we should start eating. By 8 Huzzur, I was calling Daniel's phone for the 5th time. They arrived at 8:15. Jessica walked through my front door in a white designer dress that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. Her heels clicked onto my hardwood floors as she swept past me, without a word, headed straight for the center of the living room where everyone could see her, and struck a pose with her left hand extended to show off her engagement ring. "Oh my God, you guys, isn't it gorgeous?" she squealed, and immediately the younger guests swarmed her with their phones out, taking pictures for Instagram. I stood by the door with my hand still extended from an unacknowledged hug, watching my son follow his fiancée inside, looking exhausted and apologetic. "Sorry, Mom," he whispered, kissing my cheek quickly. Jessica needed time to get ready. "I made all this food," I said quietly. "People have been waiting for 2 hours." His face flushed with embarrassment, but before he could respond, Jessica's voice rang out across the room. "Maggie." She always called me Maggie, never Mom or even Mrs. Sullivan. "People wait for important things. This is an important night." The room went quiet for just a moment. A few people laughed awkwardly. Daniel looked at the floor, and I told myself she was just excited, just young, just nervous about meeting everyone. I told myself a lot of things that night. While everyone ate and celebrated, I noticed Jessica didn't once thank me for hosting. She didn't compliment the food or acknowledge the decorations. She spent 3 hours taking selfies, posing with her ring, and talking about the wedding she was planning. At one point, Bob's sister Margaret, who I was named after, pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Honey," she said gently, "are you sure about this girl? Daniel loves her?" I said, scrubbing a serving dish harder than necessary. "That's not what I asked." "It's his choice, Aunt Margaret. All I can do is support him." She squeezed my shoulder. "Just remember you're allowed to have boundaries, even with family, especially with family." I wish I'd listened to her. The wedding planning. The next few months were a masterclass in Jessica's priorities. She wanted a $60,000 wedding. Daniel made good money as a software engineer, but he didn't have $60,000 just lying around, especially not with his student loans and the new car he'd just bought. Jessica worked in marketing and made decent money too, but from what Daniel let slip, most of her paycheck went to designer clothes, expensive dinners, and maintaining the lifestyle she showed on her Instagram feed. "What about your parents?" I asked Daniel during one of our increasingly rare lunches together. "Are they contributing?" He looked uncomfortable. "They say they can't. Financial difficulties." This confused me because I'd met Patricia and David Monroe twice, and both times they'd been dripping in expensive everything. Patricia wore more jewelry than I owned in total, and David drove a BMW that looked brand new. "Oh," I said, "that's hard. I'm sorry." "It's fine. We'll figure it out. Maybe scale things back a bit." But Jessica didn't want to scale back. She wanted the country club venue, the designer dress, the elaborate floral arrangements, the open bar, the band, the videographer, the photo booth, and the weekend activities for out-of-town guests. 2 weeks before she sent out the invitations, Daniel called me. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I want you to know you can absolutely say no." "What is it?" "Jessica and I are a little short on the wedding budget. With everything she wants, and I want her to have the wedding of her dreams, we're about $15,000 short. I know it's a lot, and like I said, you can totally say no, but yes." I said, "Mom, you didn't even—" "Yes, I'll help. I want Daniel's wedding day to be perfect." His relief was palpable through the phone. "Thank you, Mom. Seriously, thank you. I don't know what we'd do without you." I took $15,000 from Bob's life insurance. It was the first significant amount I'd withdrawn since he died, and I felt guilty doing it like I was spending Bob himself. But he would have wanted Daniel to be happy. He would have wanted our son's wedding day to be perfect. Or would he? The thought came to me as I was authorizing the bank transfer, and I pushed it away. Bob would understand. He always understood. The wedding day, October 15th, 2 years ago. The most beautiful fall day Colorado can offer: crisp air, golden leaves, perfect blue sky. The Lakewood Country Club was transformed into something from a magazine. White roses and eucalyptus everywhere, string lights in the trees. A glass pavilion set up on the lawn overlooking the mountains. Jessica had gotten her dream wedding. I arrived early to help set up, but the wedding planner Jessica hired another expense shooed me away. "The mother of the groom doesn't set up," she said with a practiced smile. "You're a guest today." So I sat in the bridal suite and watched Jessica get ready with her 6 bridesmaids, her mother Patricia, and a small army of hair and makeup artists. No one asked me to help with anything. When I offered to hold Jessica's veil while she got into her dress, one of the bridesmaids, Courtney, I think said, "We've got it, thanks." The ceremony was beautiful. Daniel cried when he saw Jessica walking down the aisle. I cried too, but for different reasons. I was losing my son, and I knew it. Not losing him to marriage that would have been natural, expected, even happy. I was losing him to Jessica's world, where mothers-in-law weren't part of the picture. At the reception, I learned exactly where I stood. I'd assumed I would sit at the head table with Daniel, Jessica, and the wedding party. Instead, I was seated at table 8 between Daniel's elderly Uncle Joe, who was hard of hearing, and a couple I'd never met who turned out to be friends of Jessica's parents. The head table, meanwhile, had Daniel, Jessica, the maid of honor, the best man, Jessica's parents, and 2 empty chairs. "Who are those for?" I asked Daniel later, trying to keep my voice light. "Oh." He looked uncomfortable. "Jess's grandmother was supposed to come, but she's not feeling well, and we thought we'd need the extra chair for gifts or something." Extra chairs for potential gifts, but not one for the mother of the groom. During the speeches, the maid of honor talked about Jessica's fabulous life and amazing style. The best man told funny stories about Daniel in college. Jessica's father gave a rambling toast about love and partnership that mentioned Daniel exactly twice. No one asked me to speak. I'd prepared something, just a short story about Daniel as a little boy, when he used to tell me he was going to marry me when he grew up. A sweet, funny story that ended with how happy I was that he'd found Jessica instead. I never got to tell it. During dinner, I watched Jessica work the room like a professional networker, stopping at each table for photos and chit-chat. She spent 15 minutes at her sorority sister's table, 10 minutes with her parents' friends, 5 minutes with Daniel's colleagues. She never came to table 8. At the end of the night, as people were leaving, Patricia Monroe found me by the gift table. "Margaret," she said, slightly drunk and overly friendly, "you're so generous. I mean, really, so generous." I'm happy to help make their day special. We always knew Daniel married well, she said, patting my arm. Then she leaned in her wine breath hot on my face. Between you and me, David and I could have paid for this whole thing. But why should we? Jessica's smart. She found a man with family money. She wandered off, leaving me standing there trying to process what she'd just said. Family money, we weren't wealthy. We were comfortable. Bob had worked hard and saved carefully, and the life insurance had helped, but we weren't rich. Daniel had a good job, but he was hardly making 6 figures yet. Unless Patricia meant me. Unless Jessica had somehow convinced herself or her parents that I was the bank. I found Daniel by the bar loosening his tie and talking with his best man, Marcus. "Hey, Mom." He gave me a warm hug, and for a moment he was my little boy again. "Did you have a good time?" "Beautiful wedding," I said, which was true. "Congratulations, honey." "Thanks for everything you did," he said. "Really, I know the financial help was huge." Marcus, who I'd known since Daniel brought him home from college freshman year, looked at me with something like pity in his eyes. "Mrs. Sullivan, you want me to get you a drink?" he asked. "No, thank you, Marcus. I think I'm going to head home." "Already?" Daniel looked disappointed. "They haven't done the last dance yet." "I'm tired, sweetheart. It's been a long day." "Okay. Love you, Mom." "Love you too." I drove home alone and cried in my driveway for 20 minutes before I could go inside. The house felt so empty. Bob's chair still sat by the window where he used to read the paper every morning. His coffee mug was still in the cabinet, though I could never bring myself to use it. His picture sat on his mantel, smiling at me with that kind, steady expression that had carried me through 35 years of marriage. I don't know if I did the right thing. I told his picture. I wanted to make him happy, but I feel like I just bought him a prison sentence. Bob didn't answer. He never did anymore. Sitting in my attic 2 years later, looking at those wedding photos, I could trace the exact path of how I'd lost my son. It hadn't been sudden. It had been gradual, like watching the tide pull sand away from a beach so slow you don't notice until the shoreline has completely changed. The dinners that stopped. Before Jessica, Daniel and I had dinner together every Thursday night. It started right after Bob's funeral when Daniel was so worried about me being alone that he insisted on checking in regularly. It became our tradition, our special time when he'd tell me about work, about his friends, about his life, and I'd make his favorite meals and feel like I still had purpose. The first Thursday after the honeymoon, Jessica came too. That was fine, expected even. She was part of his life now. "Maggie, this is so retro," Jessica said, looking at my pot roast and mashed potatoes. "Have you heard of HelloFresh? They send you these meal kits with recipes. Really modernizes home cooking." "I like cooking from scratch," I said mildly. "Bob always said my pot roast was the best he'd ever had." "Right. Bob." Jessica pushed the meat around her plate. "How long has he been gone now?" 9 years. 9 years and you still cook his favorite foods." She laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. "That's so sweet." In a sad kind of way. Daniel said nothing, just kept eating eyes on his plate. The second Thursday, Jessica texted me an hour before they were supposed to arrive. "So sorry work dinner came up, rain check. The third Thursday, Dan's exhausted, can we reschedule? The fourth Thursday, we have couples therapy tonight. I saw Daniel's car at the LA Fitness parking lot that fourth Thursday at 7 p.m. They didn't have therapy. They had whatever Jessica wanted them to have, which was not dinner with me. Over the next 2 years, our Thursday dinners went from weekly to monthly to whenever we can fit it in, which turned out to be approximately 4 times a year. And every time they did come over, it got worse. The comments. Jessica had a gift for saying cruel things in a voice so sweet and light that you couldn't quite call her out without seeming oversensitive. She'd walk into my living room and say, "Oh my God, Maggie, is this couch from the 90s? You know they have these amazing furniture stores now. We could take you shopping." She'd look at the photos on my mantle, my wedding photo, Daniel's baby pictures, Bob's military portrait from his young days, and say, "These frames are so dated. Daniel, we should get your mom some nice modern ones for Christmas." She'd watch me cook and say, "You know, studies show that cooking everything from scratch is actually kind of inefficient. Time is money, right?" That's what I always tell Dan. Every comment was dressed up as helpful advice. Every dig was packaged as concern. And Daniel, my son, who used to defend me from playground bullies, who used to tell kids in middle school that his mom was the coolest teacher at Roosevelt Elementary, sat there and said nothing. One dinner, the last one we had before the Cabo trip, though I didn't know it then, Jessica outdid herself. We were eating the lasagna I'd spent all afternoon making using Bob's mother's recipe that had been passed down for 3 generations. "This is so heavy," Jessica said, taking tiny bites. "All this cheese and pasta. Dan and I are trying to eat cleaner, more lean protein, you know. We've really been watching our weight." She looked at me when she said that last part, her eyes traveling deliberately over my body. I'd gained weight since Bob died. Grief weight, my doctor called it. 30 pounds of sadness that I couldn't seem to lose no matter how many times I tried. "It's a family recipe," I said quietly. "Right family recipe. From like what, the 1950s? She laughed. "People didn't know about nutrition back then. They just made everything with butter and cheese and called it a meal." "Jess," Daniel finally said, his voice low. "Come on. What I'm just saying. No offense, Maggie, but this kind of food is probably why—" She stopped herself, but we all knew what she was about to say. "Probably why you're fat. Probably why you're alone. Probably why you can't let go of the past." I stood up, picked up my plate, and walked to the kitchen. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the plate in the sink. Daniel followed me. "Mom, I'm sorry. She didn't mean—" "Yes, she did. She's just stressed about work. They're doing layoffs and she's worried and—" "Daniel," I turned to face him. "Why don't you ever defend me?" He looked at me with such guilt in his eyes that I almost took it back. Almost said it was fine, no big deal. I was overreacting. "I don't know," he said finally. "I should. I'm sorry." But sorry didn't change anything. Sorry didn't make him speak up the next time, or the time after that, or any of the times that followed. The social media cruelty. I'm not big on social media. I have a Facebook account that I check maybe once a week to see photos of my old students and keep up with the book club ladies. But Linda is on Instagram and she started showing me things. "Maggie, you need to see this," she said one day, shoving her phone at me. It was Jessica's Instagram. I'd looked at it a few times before it was exactly what you'd expect. Perfectly filtered photos of her and Daniel looking impossibly happy, captions full of hashtags like #blessedlife, #couplegoals, #living my best life. But what Linda was showing me was different. Jessica had posted a photo of her and Daniel at a fancy restaurant. The caption read, "Sometimes you need to set boundaries with toxic family members for your mental health. Choosing us over obligations. #self-care, #healthy boundaries, #prioritizing us." "That's about you," Linda said flatly. "You don't know that. Maggie, her only family is her parents, and she posts photos with them all the time. This is about you." I looked at more posts. There were several in the same vein, all carefully worded so they never mentioned me by name, but were clearly about someone who made their lives difficult. The one that hurt most was from Daniel's birthday 3 months earlier. A photo of Jessica and Daniel at what looked like an upscale steakhouse, holding champagne glasses and smiling. Caption, "Celebrating my husband's 33rd birthday. Just the two of us because sometimes intimate is better than obligatory. #birthday boy, #quality over quantity." I hadn't known about his birthday dinner. He'd told me he had to work late. "He's lying to you," Linda said gently. "She's isolating him from you, and he's letting her. He's an adult, Linda. He can make his own choices. And you're his mother. You can choose not to accept being treated like garbage." But I did accept it. Because Daniel was all I had left of Bob, all I had left of the family we'd built together, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing him completely. So I kept quiet. Kept accepting the crumbs of attention he threw my way. Kept telling myself that things would get better, that Jessica would mature, that Daniel would find his spine again. I kept telling myself lies. After booking the trip, $11,847.23 to be exact, I should have felt excited. I was going to Mexico somewhere Bob and I had always talked about visiting but never got around to. I was going to spend a week with my son. Surely away from work, stress, and daily pressures, we'd reconnect. But the 6 weeks between booking and departure were 6 weeks of slow torture. Week 1. The booking. I'd called Daniel the day after our phone conversation to confirm everything. "Hey, Mom," so I talked to Jess about the details. For the next 20 minutes, he listed Jessica's requirements. First-class seats only. Jess says she can't sleep in economy and we have a 6-hour flight. Ocean view suite at the resort. She found this amazing room with a private balcony. Airport transfers in an SUV instead of the shuttle. More comfortable. Travel insurance, just in case. By the time I hung up, the cost had ballooned from the $8,000 Daniel originally mentioned to $11,847. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and credit card looking at the confirmation screen. Click one button, and I'd be spending almost $12,000 money Bob had saved by bringing lunch to work every day, by driving his old Honda until it literally died, by taking pride in being frugal. "Is this what you wanted?" I asked Bob's picture. "For me to spend your life's work on a daughter-in-law who hates me and a son who won't stand up for me?" But Bob's picture just smiled that steady smile, and I clicked Confirm Purchase. The charge hit my credit card immediately. $11,847.23. 5 minutes later, I got a text from Jessica. "Not a thank you. Just OMG first class. So fancy, hope you can keep up with us, LOL." I stared at that text for a long time. Keep up with us, like I was old and slow and likely to be a burden. I was 68, not dead. I walked 3 miles every morning. I'd hiked Mount Evans just last summer with the book club ladies. But to Jessica, I was already decrepit. Weeks 2 and 3. The group chat from hell. Jessica created a group chat and named it Cabo Squad, with her, Daniel, and me. Every message was a carefully crafted reminder that I was the third wheel. "Jessica, just booked us a couple's massage at the spa." "Dan, it's going to be so romantic, Maggie. I saw they have a senior yoga class at 9 a.m. if you're interested." Jessica, "Found this amazing tequila tasting experience, 21 plus only though, just kidding, LOL." "Maggie, I bet they have nice relaxing activities by the pool while we do this." Jessica, "Reservations made at El Pescador for sunset dinner. Dress code is upscale resort casual, so like nice dresses and heels." "Maggie, I think they have a more casual restaurant by the lobby that might be more your speed." Every message was CC'd to Daniel, so he saw everything. And every time his response was the same silence or a thumbs-up emoji. Not once did he say, "Jess, Mom is coming on the couple's massage, too." Not once did he say, "Actually, let's do something all 3 of us can enjoy." Not once did he defend me. I tried responding cheerfully. "Sounds great and can't wait and whatever you kids want to do." But inside I was dying. Linda saw the messages I'd taken to screenshotting them and sending them to her, needing someone to validate that this wasn't normal, wasn't okay. "Maggie, you need to cancel this trip." "I can't, I already paid." "So get a refund." "Daniel needs this. They need this. Maybe once we're there, things will be different. Or maybe you'll spend $12,000 to be excluded and humiliated in a foreign country instead of at home." She wasn't wrong, but I couldn't give up. Giving up on this trip felt like giving up on Daniel entirely. Week 4, the private message. On a Wednesday night after Jessica had posted another message in the group chat about a sunset catamaran cruise. So romantic, just for couples though. My phone buzzed with a private message from Daniel. Daniel, "Hey Mom, sorry about some of Jess's messages. She's just really excited and sometimes doesn't think about how things sound." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to type so many things. I wanted to ask him why he never spoke up in the group chat. I wanted to ask when he'd stopped caring about my feelings. I wanted to ask if he even wanted me on this trip at all. Instead, I typed, "It's okay, honey. I understand. Can't wait to spend time with you both." I deleted it and started again. "Daniel, I need to be honest with you. These messages are hurtful. Jessica makes me feel like I'm a burden you're forced to bring along instead of someone you want to spend time with. This trip was supposed to be about us reconnecting, but I deleted that too. Finally, I sent "No worries. See you soon." He sent back a relieved emoji, and that was that. Another moment of potential honesty wasted. Another chance to set boundaries missed. Week 5. The research. I couldn't sleep. Again. It was becoming a pattern, lying awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, feeling Bob's absence like a physical weight on my chest. I got up and did what I'd been doing a lot lately, Googling variations of daughter-in-law excludes me, feeling unwanted by son's wife, mother-in-law problems. The internet, it turns out, is full of women like me. Reddit threads with hundreds of comments, support groups, article after article about toxic in-law relationships, and sons who won't stand up to their wives. I felt validated and heartbroken in equal measure. At 3 a.m., unable to stop myself, I Googled something else. How to cancel flight reservation. That's when I learned something interesting about airline bookings. As the primary cardholder, I had control over the reservation. I could make changes. I could even if I needed to remove my payment method, which would flag the reservation as unpaid. I called the airline customer service line using the excuse that I wanted to understand how my booking worked. So if I needed to cancel, how would that work? I asked the cheerful representative. Well, ma'am, you booked first-class tickets, so you do have more flexibility. However, you're within the penalty period, so there would be significant cancellation fees. What if I just removed my credit card from the booking? A pause. Well, that's not a typical scenario. But technically, if you removed the payment method, the reservation would be flagged as unpaid. The tickets would still show as issued, but when passengers tried to board, they'd be denied. The system would show a payment issue, yes. But ma'am, I have to ask, why would someone do that? It would cause significant problems. Just curious, I said. Just trying to understand how it all works. Well, you technically have up to 24 hours after departure to contest charges or modify payment methods for various legitimate reasons. But I've never heard of someone doing what you're describing. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my bedroom, Bob's picture barely visible in the moonlight coming through the window. A seed had been planted. Not a plan, not yet. Just knowledge. Just the understanding that I had more power than I thought. Week 6, the last Thursday. The final Thursday before our Saturday departure, Daniel and Jessica came over for dinner. Or rather, Daniel came over. Jessica stayed in the car. She's not feeling well, Daniel explained, looking embarrassed. Thinks she might be getting a cold. Doesn't want to get you sick before the trip. We both knew it was a lie. I could see her in the car phone glowing perfectly healthy and perfectly uninterested in spending time with me. Daniel and I ate reheated lasagna, the same lasagna Jessica had criticized in awkward silence. Are you excited about the trip? I finally asked. Yeah, definitely. It'll be good to get away. Daniel, can I ask you something? He looked up wary. Sure. Does Jessica want me on this trip? His face, oh his face. The guilt, the conflict, the trapped expression of someone caught between loyalty to his mother and loyalty to his wife. Mom, of course she does. She's just, please don't lie to me. I'm not lying. She's just, it's complicated, okay? Jess has some issues with her own mom, and sometimes that makes her weird about mother-in-law stuff. But she's working on it. Does she know I'm paying for this entire trip? Yes, of course. And she's grateful. Really. She hasn't said thank you once. She will. Once we're there and she can relax, you'll see. She'll be different. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. Okay, I said. I trust you, but I didn't. Not really. Not anymore. After he left, rushing out to get back to Jessica, who honked the horn twice like she was summoning a servant, I went to my bedroom and pulled out my suitcase. I'm a light packer, always have been. Bob used to joke that I could live a month out of a carry-on. So while Jessica apparently needed 3 checked bags plus a carry-on, I packed a single small suitcase, a few sundresses, a swimsuit, comfortable sandals, sunscreen, my book club book, and a framed 4x6 photo of Bob. I set my alarm for 4:00 a.m. Our flight was at 7:30, which meant we needed to be at the airport by 5:30. I didn't sleep at all. At 3:00 a.m. I got up and made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, looked at Bob's picture. I almost canceled, I told him. Called 3 times today to cancel everything. But I can't. I can't give up on our son. Bob's picture smiled. In my mind, I heard his voice, the real Bob, the man who'd loved me for 35 years. Maggie loves sometimes giving up on a situation isn't the same as giving up on a person. Sometimes it's teaching them what you won't accept. But Bob wasn't really there. That was just what I wished he'd say. At 4:00 a.m., I loaded my suitcase into my Honda, the car I'd bought used 5 years ago, because I was careful with money, because Bob had taught me to be responsible. At 4:45 a.m., I pulled into the Denver International Airport parking garage. At 5:15 a.m., I walked into the terminal, pulling my small carry-on behind me, wearing comfortable jeans, a nice sweater, and walking shoes. At that moment, I was still planning to go on this vacation, still planning to try to make things work. I had no idea that in less than 2 hours, everything would change. To be continued. What happened next at that airport changed my relationship with my son forever. But before I tell you about the confrontation that shifted everything I need to know, have you ever felt excluded by your own family? Have you ever paid for something only to be treated like you were the burden? Comment below and let me know. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe because the second part gets even more intense. Trust me, you won't want to miss what I did next. Recap and hook. In part 1, I told you how I agreed to pay $11,847 for a Cabo vacation for my son Daniel and his wife Jessica, and how they spent 6 weeks making me feel like an unwanted burden. But what I haven't told you yet is what happened that morning at Denver International Airport. The morning everything changed. If you're just joining us, go back and watch part 1 first. You'll need the full story to understand why I did what I'm about to tell you. And for those of you who've been waiting, comment your city and let me know if you've ever reached your breaking point with family. Because that's exactly where I was at 5:15 a.m. on that Saturday morning in February. The thing about Denver International Airport is that it's massive. Opened in 1995, it's actually the largest airport in the United States by land area. Most people don't know that. I learned it from Bob, who loved random facts and used to quiz me on them during long car rides. I thought about Bob as I walked through the terminal that morning. Thought about how he would have handled Jessica. Thought about what he would say if he could see me now, 68 years old, pulling a sensible carry-on through an airport at 5:15 a.m. to go on a vacation I was paying for with people who didn't want me there. The terminal was quiet at this hour. A few sleepy travelers, some airport workers changing shifts, the smell of coffee from the Starbucks kiosk that was just opening. I bought a medium coffee black the way Bob always drank it and found a seat near gate B47 where our flight would depart. I took out my phone. No messages from Daniel. I wasn't surprised. Jessica was probably taking her time getting ready, making them late, and Daniel was probably stressed about it but unwilling to say anything. I opened my banking app. The charge was there, $11,847 due 23 to United Airlines and Casa del Mar Resort. Posted 2 days ago. Cleared and processed. I stared at that number. Almost $12,000. Bob had saved that money by bringing turkey sandwiches to work for 30 years, by changing his own oil, by shopping at discount stores and never buying anything full price, by sacrificing little pleasures every single day so we could have security, and I was spending it to be excluded and humiliated. My hands started shaking, not from fear, from something else. Something that had been building for 2 years. Anger. 5:35 a.m. They arrive. I saw them before they saw me. Jessica first, naturally, because she was impossible to miss. White linen pants. In February. In Colorado. With a designer crop top that showed her flat stomach and a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her blonde hair was in perfect beach waves, the kind that take an hour with a curling iron but are supposed to look effortless. She wore oversized sunglasses even though the sun wasn't up yet, and her heels clicked on the airport floor like a judge's gavel. Behind her, Daniel looked exhausted. He was pulling 2 large Louis Vuitton suitcases, hers, obviously, and carrying a leather duffel bag over his shoulder. His hair was disheveled, his eyes had dark circles, and even from 50 feet away I could see the tension in his shoulders. They looked like a boss and her assistant, not a married couple going on a romantic vacation. "Morning, Mom," Daniel called out when he spotted me. He let go of one suitcase and gave me a quick one-armed hug. His shirt smelled like Jessica's perfume, something expensive and overwhelming. "Carol," Jessica said. Not "Hi, Maggie," not "Good morning," just my name stated like she was marking attendance. "Good morning, Jessica, you're right on time." "Of course we are." She looked at me critically. "You got here early." "I like to give myself plenty of time for security and everything." "Of course you do." She said it like it was a character flaw, being responsible and punctual. Daniel was already moving toward the ticket counter with the suitcases. "Let's get these checked." I followed with my single carry-on, watching Daniel struggle with Jessica's luggage. She didn't offer to help. She was on her phone taking a selfie with the Denver sign in the background. At the check-in counter, the United agent smiled professionally. "Good morning. How many bags are we checking today?" 3, Jessica said, gesturing to her suitcases like a queen indicating her trunks. The agent typed into her computer. "Okay, so that's 2 included with your first-class tickets and 1 additional bag at $50. Jessica's head snapped up. $50 for 1 bag. "Yes, ma'am. That's the fee for a 3rd checked bag." That's ridiculous. Jessica turned to me. Maggie, can you cover the bag fee since you paid for the flights anyway? There it was, the first nickel and diming. The assumption that my credit card was just an extension of their budget. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Jess, It's fine, I said, pulling out my wallet. I'll get it. I handed the agent my credit card. She processed the payment, and I watched another $50 disappear. $50 that Bob had earned by working overtime. $50 that now belonged to Jessica's excessive luggage. Thank you, Daniel said quietly. Jessica said nothing. She was already walking toward security. 6:00 a.m. TSA security. The security line was short at this hour, which should have made things easy. Should have. Jessica put her expensive leather carry-on bag on the conveyor belt and walked through the scanner. Then the TSA agent at the X-ray machine called out, "Ma'am, I need to check your bag." Jessica turned around, irritated. "Why?" The agent pulled her bag aside and unzipped it. Inside were at least 6 bottles of full-size skincare products, lotions, serums, toners, a large bottle of La Mer perfume. "Ma'am, you can't bring liquids over 3.4 ounces through security. You'll need to throw these out or go back and check this bag." "Are you kidding me?" Jessica's voice rose sharply. "Do you know how much this stuff costs?" "I understand, ma'am, but TSA regulations. This perfume alone is $400. $400. Other travelers were starting to stare. The TSA agent remained professional but firm. "I don't care if it's liquid gold, ma'am. Over 3. 4 ounces doesn't go through security." "This is absurd. I fly all the time." "Jess," Daniel said quietly, touching her arm. "Just throw it out. We'll buy more in Cabo." "Buy more? Do you have any idea?" She turned on the TSA agent. Fine. This is ridiculous, but fine." She grabbed each bottle and threw it in the trash bin with dramatic flourishes, making sure everyone in line could see her sacrifice. The final item was the perfume, which she held up like a martyr displaying their wounds before dropping it in. "Happy," she snapped at the agent. "Have a nice flight, ma'am." Jessica grabbed her bag and stalked through security, her face red with rage and embarrassment. Daniel followed, apologizing quietly to the TSA agent as he passed. I went through security without incident. My small bag had nothing but a travel-sized toothpaste and a small bottle of sunscreen, both well under the size limit. When I caught up to them on the other side, Jessica was standing with her arms crossed, radiating fury. Daniel was trying to calm her down. "It's fine, Jess. It's just stuff. We'll have a great trip." "That's not the point, Daniel. The point is these people are on a power trip. That woman was clearly—" "Let's just go to the gate," he said, cutting her off. He looked at me with an expression that said, "Please don't make this worse." I said nothing, just followed them toward our gate, feeling the tension rolling off Jessica like heat off pavement. 6:20 a.m. The United Club. I had one last surprise for them. One last attempt to make this trip start on a positive note. "Hey," I said as we approached gate B47. "I got us United Club passes. Thought we could have breakfast and relax before the flight." Daniel's face brightened. "Really? That's awesome, Mom. Thanks." Jessica looked at me suspiciously, like she was trying to figure out the catch. "How much did that cost?" "It's my treat. Come on." The United Club was on the concourse level, up an escalator and behind glass doors. Inside it was quiet and comfortable leather chairs, businessmen on laptops, the breakfast buffet along the back wall with fresh fruit pastries, made-to-order omelets, and a full bar even at this early hour. "Wow," Daniel said, looking around. "This is nice." Jessica was already heading to the buffet. I watched her pile food onto her plate, smoked salmon, imported cheeses, fresh berries, 3 different pastries. Then she loaded a second plate for what I assumed would be seconds later. I made myself a modest plate of fresh fruit and yogurt, got a coffee, and looked for a table. There was a nice spot by the window with 3 chairs. Perfect. I sat down and started eating, watching the sunrise paint the tarmac pink and gold. Denver sunrises were beautiful. Bob and I used to wake up early just to see them. A few minutes later, Daniel and Jessica came from the buffet. Daniel was carrying his single plate. Jessica was balancing 2 plates of coffee and her phone. They walked right past me. I thought maybe they hadn't seen me. The lounge was fairly large. Maybe they were looking for a different table. But then I watched Jessica look directly at me, whisper something to Daniel, and deliberately choose a table on the opposite side of the lounge. 30 feet away, with their backs to me. I sat there with my coffee cup halfway to my lips, frozen. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't "we didn't see you." This was intentional exclusion. I looked around the lounge. Other families sat together. A young couple was sharing a newspaper. An elderly pair held hands while they ate croissants. Normal people doing normal things with people they cared about. And I was sitting alone in a lounge I'd paid $200 to access, watching my son and his wife deliberately exclude me. Something broke inside me in that moment. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet crack, like ice on a lake finally giving way under too much weight. I pulled out my phone and opened the United Airlines app. Ted. 6:55 a.m. The decision. My hands were steady now. That's what I remember most clearly. The shaking had stopped. The anger had crystallized into something cold and clear and purposeful. I found our reservation. Found the manage booking option. Found the payment methods section. My credit card information was there, and below it a small blue link, Remove Payment Method. I read the warning that popped up. Removing a payment method may affect active reservations. Are you sure? I looked across the lounge at Daniel and Jessica. They were laughing about something, probably something on her phone. They looked happy. They looked like a couple without a care in the world. They looked like two people who didn't need me there at all. I clicked Remove Payment Method. Another warning, this action cannot be undone without contacting customer service. Continue. I thought about Bob, about his letter. Live life and be happy. Was I happy being treated like this? Was this what Bob meant when he said to live life? I clicked Continue. The screen refreshed. Payment method removed. Please note this may affect your reservation status. Then I did the same thing for the resort booking. 2 minutes. That's all it took. 2 minutes to undo $11,847.23 worth of vacation. I felt nothing. No guilt, no panic, no regret, just peace. I finished my fruit and yogurt, had a second cup of coffee, read the news on my phone. Around me, business travelers came and went, nobody knowing that the elderly woman by the window had just made a decision that would change everything. 7:10 a.m., walking to the gate. The announcement came over the lounge speakers. United Airlines Flight 1947 to Cabo San Lucas is now boarding at Gate B47. Jessica and Daniel stood up, gathered their things, and walked toward the exit. They passed within 10 feet of me and didn't acknowledge me once. I waited until they were gone, then stood up, threw away my trash, and followed. The walk from the lounge to the gate felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body. Maggie Sullivan, 68 years old, retired teacher widow, mother of one, walking toward a confrontation she'd spent 2 years avoiding. When I got to the gate, I saw 3 empty seats together. I sat down in one of them, setting my carry-on beside me. A minute later, Daniel and Jessica approached. Jessica saw me sitting there, and her face did something complicated annoyance calculation decision. "Bradley," she said loudly, loud enough that people around us looked up. "Let's sit over there. It's less crowded." It wasn't less crowded. The area she pointed to actually had more people, but it was away from me, and that was the point. Daniel hesitated. For one brief, shining moment, I thought he might actually say something, might actually tell his wife that his mother was right there in perfectly good seats, and they should sit together like a normal family, but he didn't. He just picked up his bag and followed Jessica to the other seating area. I watched them go, watched my son choose his wife's cruelty over his mother's dignity, and I felt the last thread of doubt snap. This was the right decision. This was absolutely the right decision. 7:15 a.m. Boarding begins. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen." The gate agent's voice came over the speakers. "We'd like to begin boarding United Flight 1847 to Cabo San Lucas. We'll start with our first-class passengers and anyone needing extra time." I stood up. I'd paid for first class. I'd earned this seat with Bob's money, Bob's sacrifice, Bob's years of bringing turkey sandwiches to work. I got in line behind a young couple in matching Harvard sweatshirts. Behind me, I heard Jessica's voice and the click of her heels on the floor. She'd gotten in line too. Then I felt her hand on my shoulder, actually felt her physically touch me, trying to move me aside. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp. "We need to get through." I turned around slowly, looked at her perfectly made-up face, her designer clothes, her entitled expression. "We're all first class, Jessica. We'll all board together." Her eyes narrowed. Some of us have overhead bin space to worry about. You just have that tiny bag. I'm not moving. The Harvard couple in front of me had turned around to watch. Other passengers were paying attention now, sensing drama. Oh my God, Maggie! Jessica's voice rose, and I could see her face flushing with anger or embarrassment, or both. Why do you have to make everything difficult? We're trying to have a nice vacation and you're already causing problems. I'm not causing— You know what? She cut me off and her voice got even louder. People were definitely watching now. Some had their phones out. Stay out of our way. You didn't even pay for this trip anyway. We saved for this. We earned this vacation. The words hit like a slap. The boarding area went silent. Even the gate agent stopped scanning tickets to watch. You didn't even pay for this trip. I opened my mouth. 1,000 responses flooded my brain. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pull out my phone and show everyone the $11.847.23 charge on my credit card. I wanted to tell this entire airport that I'd paid for every single penny while Jessica hadn't contributed a dime. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped aside. You're right, I said quietly. I'll stay out of your way. Jessica smirked, actually smirked, and walked past me. Daniel followed her, his face bright red, not meeting my eyes. They handed their boarding passes to the agent and disappeared down the jetway. I stood there for a moment, people's eyes on me, feeling the weight of public humiliation. Then I pulled out my phone one more time and opened the resort booking app. If I'd had any doubts before, Jessica had just eliminated them. I removed the payment method for the resort. This action will cancel your reservation. Continue. I clicked confirm. Then I got in line and boarded the plane. My seat was 2A window seat, first class, right side of the plane. Daniel and Jessica were in row 1, seats 1D and 1F across the aisle. Close enough to hear Jessica's laugh, far enough to be completely separate. I settled in, stowed my bag, and buckled my seatbelt. The flight attendant came by with a tray of pre-departure beverages. Champagne orange juice. Champagne, please. She poured me a glass in a real glass flute, not plastic. I took a sip and looked out the window at the Denver skyline. The sun was fully up now, painting everything gold. In row 1, I could hear Jessica talking to Daniel. Can't believe your mother tried to cut in line like that. So embarrassing. Jess, I don't think, and acting like she's some VIP when she's never even been out of the country before. This is going to be a long week. Daniel said something I couldn't hear. His voice was low, apologetic. The plane filled up. A businessman sat next to me in 2B, immediately opening his laptop. He nodded politely and I nodded back. The captain's voice came over the speakers. Flight attendants, prepare for departure. We pushed back from the gate. The engines powered up. We taxied toward the runway. And I felt nothing. No guilt, no panic, no second thoughts. Just this strange, quiet certainty that I'd done exactly the right thing. Mid-flight. The confrontation that almost was about 3 hours into the flight, after the meal service, a surprisingly good pan-seared salmon with asparagus. I got up to use the lavatory. On my way back, Daniel was standing in the galley getting water. We almost collided. Oh, sorry, Mom. It's fine. We stood there awkwardly in the small galley space. He looked terrible up close. The dark circles under his eyes, the tension around his mouth, the way he couldn't quite meet my gaze. Hey, Mom. About earlier, at the gate. I'm sorry Jess was so— Don't, I said quietly. Don't what? Don't apologize for her. Not anymore. He looked stunned. I'd never talked to him like this before. Never been so direct. She's just stressed about Daniel. I looked at him, really looked at him. When had he become so beaten down? When had my strong, confident son turned into this apologetic shell of a person? Do you know what I see when I look at you? Mom, please don't. I see a man who used to defend me from playground bullies, who used to tell kids at school that his mom was the coolest teacher in the district, who used to say I love you without prompting. My voice cracked slightly. And now I see someone who sits silent while his wife insults me, someone who follows her to a different table in a lounge I paid for, someone who lets her announce to an airport that I didn't pay for a trip that's on my credit card. I know. I'm sorry. I should— You should what? You should stand up for me. You should set boundaries. You should remember that I'm your mother and I deserve respect. I shook my head. Daniel, honey, I don't want you to should anything. I want you to want to defend me. And you don't. Not anymore. That's not true. Yes, it is. And I'm done pretending it isn't. I walked past him back to my seat. He stood there in the galley for a long moment, then returned to row 1. I put in my earbuds and closed my eyes. I didn't sleep, but I didn't need to. I just needed to not see his face, not hear Jessica's voice, not feel the weight of their presence. The plane flew on through the bright blue sky, carrying us all toward consequences. 5 hours later, the pilot's voice came over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Los Cabos International Airport. Local time is 1:15 p.m. and it's a beautiful 84 degrees. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for landing. Jessica squealed with excitement in row 1. Through the window, I could see Cabo Brown hills dotted with white buildings, the deep blue ocean, the distinctive arch of Land's End in the distance. It was beautiful. Bob would have loved it. We landed smoothly. The plane taxied to the gate. People stood up grabbing bags from overhead bins, eager to start their vacations. I stayed seated until almost everyone had deplaned. No rush. I knew what was waiting for them. The airport. Los Cabos International Airport is beautiful in that distinctive Mexican way, open air in places colorful, warm with mariachi music playing softly in the background. Tourists everywhere with sunburned faces and excited chatter. I walked slowly through the terminal, pulling my small carry-on behind me. Through customs, past the duty-free shops with their tequila and silver jewelry, past families taking photos by the welcome sign. And there, about 50 feet ahead, I saw them at the transfer desk. Casa del Mar Resort had a dedicated counter for guest shuttles. Daniel and Jessica were standing there, Daniel showing his phone to the representative, a young woman named Maria, according to her name tag. I found a small cafe with a perfect view of the counter, ordered a horchata, and sat down at a high table. And I watched. The unraveling begins. From where I sat, I could see but not hear, but I could read body language perfectly. Maria typed something into her computer, frowned, typed more. Her smile faded. She picked up a phone, made a call, spoke for about 30 seconds, her expression getting more serious. Jessica's body language changed. She straightened up, started gesturing. Daniel leaned over the counter, pointing at his phone. Maria shook her head, made another call. This was taking much longer than a normal shuttle check-in. More gestures from Jessica. Her voice was getting louder. I could hear the rise and fall of it even from 50 feet away. Daniel pulled out his wallet, opened it, showed Maria something. She shook her head again. And that's when Jessica turned around. She saw me sitting there, horchata in hand, watching. The look on her face, confusion first, then realization, then shock. She grabbed Daniel's arm and spun him around. He saw me, and I watched understanding dawn in his eyes like a sunrise. I stood up slowly, picked up my drink, and walked over. Climax number 2, the confrontation. "Mom!" Daniel said, his voice tight with panic. "They're saying there's a problem with the reservation." "Is there?" I said calmly. Maria looked at me hopefully. "Are you Margaret Sullivan, the card holder for this reservation?" "I am." "Mom, can you tell them there's been a mistake? Show them your card or something?" I looked at my son, then at Jessica, whose face was starting to turn an interesting shade of red. "There's no mistake," I said clearly. "I removed my credit card from the booking this morning, about 30 minutes before we boarded the plane." Silence. Complete absolute silence except for the ambient noise of the airport announcements in Spanish and English, rolling luggage, distant conversations. "You..." "What?" Daniel whispered. "I removed my payment method for the flights and the resort. The reservation is flagged as unpaid." "Why would you..." He stopped. Understanding washed over his face. Understanding and horror. "The gate." When Jess said, "When your wife announced to an entire airport terminal that I didn't pay for this trip," I finished for him. "Yes. That's when I decided to make her statement accurate. I stopped paying." Jessica exploded. "Are you kidding me right now, you psycho? You actually canceled our vacation." Her voice was so loud that people throughout the terminal turned to look. Airport security started moving in our direction. "I didn't cancel anything," I said calmly. "I just stopped paying for it. You said I didn't pay anyway. You said you saved for it. You earned it. So I figured I'd let you handle it yourselves." "This is insane!" Jessica shrieked. You're insane! What is wrong with you? Maria cleared her throat. Ma'am, I need to ask you to lower your voice or I'll have to call security. Bradley! Jessica grabbed Daniel's arm hard enough that he flinched. Do something, tell her she's crazy, fix this. Daniel pulled out his phone with shaking hands, opened his banking app. His face went pale. Jess, we have about $2,800 in checking. Then put it on a credit card. Our cards are maxed out. The wedding, remember? And your car payment, and then tell her to pay for it. Jessica screamed, pointing at me. Tell your psycho mother to pay for what she owes us. I felt something rise in me, something that had been building for 2 years, something that Bob would have been proud of. I don't owe you anything, Jessica. You're a miserable old bitch. You're just jealous because I have Bradley and you have nothing. Your husband is dead. You have no friends. Your son can't stand being around you. She was crying now, mascara running down her face, completely unhinged. That's why we didn't want you on this trip in the first place. Nobody wants you anywhere. You're a burden. Airport security had arrived. 2 officers in uniform looking stern. Senora, you need to calm down, one said to Jessica, but she wasn't done. He only spends time with you out of obligation. He doesn't want you there. I don't want you there. Nobody wants you anywhere, you pathetic old... Jessica, stop! Daniel said, but his voice was weak, defeated. I held up my hand, and surprisingly, Jessica went quiet. Maybe it was the look on my face. Maybe it was the security officers. But she stopped. Are you finished? I asked quietly. She glared at me, chest-heaving tears and mascara streaking her face. Good, because now it's my turn. A crowd had gathered. At least 30 people were watching this soap opera unfold in the Los Cabos airport. Some had their phones out recording. In the age of social media, someone's shame always goes viral. 6 months ago, my son called me asking for help with a vacation. Not asking directly, he's too polite for that, but asking. I said yes because I love my son and because my late husband left me money specifically to live life and help the people I care about. I looked at Daniel. He was crying now, silent tears running down his face. I paid $11,847.23. Every single penny. First-class tickets because you insisted, Jessica. Ocean View Suite because you chose it. Airport transfers. Travel insurance. Everything. And in return, you spent 6 weeks excluding me, mocking me, treating me like an inconvenience. You sat away from me in a lounge I paid for. You tried to push past me at boarding, and you announced to an entire airport that I didn't pay for this trip. I didn't mean, Jessica started, but I cut her off. Yes, you did. You meant every word, every comment about my dated furniture, every joke about senior activities, every deliberate exclusion, every tiny cruelty. You meant all of it. I turned to the resort representative. Maria, could you please call me a taxi to the Esperanza Resort? Of course, Senora, right away. Mom, please, Daniel said, his voice breaking. Wait, the Esperanza. Jessica's tears stopped instantly, replaced by confusion. But that's a luxury resort. That's like $500 a night. $543 actually, I said, for a junior suite. Your father and I always said we'd stay there if we ever came to Cabo. He's not here, but I am. And I'm going to enjoy every single minute of it. Alone. I pulled out my wallet and extracted $300 in cash. Set it on the counter. This should cover a taxi back to Denver Airport and maybe a meal. Your return flight is in 7 days, but I'm sure the airline can help you change it if you explain the situation. Or maybe Jessica's parents can help. Patricia told me at your wedding that they have plenty of money. Said you married well because of me. Daniel's face went even paler. She said that, Mom. She did. Apparently they're not broke at all. They just didn't want to pay for your wedding, so they let me do it instead. I picked up my small carry-on. Wait, Jessica said, her voice different now, calculating. You can't just leave us here. I'm not leaving you here. You're adults. You have each other. You'll figure it out. Mom, please. Daniel reached for my arm. I looked at him, my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised to be kind and strong and good, the man he'd become instead. Daniel, you're 33 years old. You made choices. You chose to let your wife exclude me. You chose to sit away from me. You chose to say nothing when she insulted me again and again. Choices have consequences. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please. I forgive you. I said, and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. I'll be at Esperanza for the week. If you want to really talk without Jessica, you can find me there. Maria came back. Your taxi is here, Senora Sullivan. Thank you, Maria. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Jessica's voice one last time. This is all your fault, Bradley. Your fault. What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? Do something. I walked out into the Mexican sunshine. The taxi driver helped me with my bag, and I climbed into the back seat. Esperanza Resort, por favor. Sí, señora. As we pulled away from the airport, I looked back one last time. Daniel and Jessica were still standing at the counter, surrounded by their designer luggage, arguing. Airport security was talking to them, and I felt nothing but peace. The Esperanza Resort wasn't just beautiful, it was everything Bob and I had dreamed about. Perched on a cliff overlooking the Sea of Cortez, with infinity pools that seemed to blend into the ocean, private casitas with outdoor showers, and a staff that treated every guest like royalty. My room junior suite ocean view cost $543 per night. With meals, spa services, and activities, the week would probably run about $3,500, still less than I would have spent being excluded and humiliated. Day 1. Arrival. Senora Sullivan, welcome to Esperanza, the front desk agent said. We're so happy to have you with us. Is your husband joining you later? My husband passed away 9 years ago, I said. This was a trip we'd always planned to take together. I decided it was time. Her face softened with genuine sympathy. I'm so sorry for your loss. We'll make sure your stay is beautiful. They upgraded me to a partial suite at no charge. For you, the manager said simply. My room had a king bed with crisp white linens, a sitting area with a view of the ocean, and a private terrace with a plunge pool. On the terrace was a small table with 2 chairs. I set Bob's photo on one of the nightstands. We made it, honey, I said. Not the way we planned, but we made it. Then I sat on that terrace and watched the sunset paint the ocean in shades of orange and gold, and I cried. Not from sadness, from relief. I was free. Day 1 evening. The phone assault. My phone started buzzing around 7 p.m. and didn't stop for 2 hours. Jessica had sent 47 text messages. I scrolled through them without reading most of them. You owe us this trip. I'll sue you. Dan is crying because of you, you bitch. You're a monster. I hope you die alone, you evil old hag. The last text at 9:15 p.m. You'll never see your son again. I'm going to make sure he hates you. I stared at that text for a long moment. Then I blocked her number. The relief was instantaneous. Day 2. Dan's call. My phone rang at 10 a.m. Daniel's number. I let it ring. Listened to the voicemail later. 3 minutes of him crying and apologizing. Mom, please pick up. We're at the Motel 6 by the airport. Jess won't stop crying. I tried to get a flight home, but standby is full for 3 days. Mom, please. I didn't realize how bad I let things get. I should have stood up for you. I should have said something. Every time she said something mean, I should have stopped her. Mom, please call me back. I love you. I'm so sorry. Please. I saved the voicemail, not to torture myself, but because someday when Daniel was ready to have a real conversation, I wanted him to remember what this moment felt like. Then I went snorkeling at Chileno Bay. Day 3. The Patricia Revelation. I was having lunch at the resort's beachside restaurant, fresh ceviche and a margarita, when I saw someone familiar at the next table. Patricia Monroe, Jessica's mother. She saw me at the same moment, and her face went through several expressions: surprise recognition, calculation, embarrassment. Margaret, is that you? Hello, Patricia. She stood up, wineglass in hand, and came over to my table uninvited. What are you doing here? Having lunch. And you? David and I come every year. We have a timeshare at Cabo Azul. She looked around nervously. Is Jessica with you? No. Jessica is at a Motel 6 by the airport with Daniel. Patricia's eyes went wide. Then she started laughing. Actually laughing, though it sounded a bit hysterical. Oh my God, you actually did it. Jessica called me yesterday screaming about you canceling their trip. I thought she was exaggerating. I didn't cancel anything. I stopped paying for it. There's a difference. Patricia sat down without being invited. Can I join you? You already have. She ordered another glass of wine and looked at me with something like respect. Jessica said you left them stranded at the airport. I gave them $300 for a taxi and meal. They're adults. They made their choices. Patricia was quiet for a moment, swirling her wine. Then you did the right thing. Excuse me. Jessica, she's my daughter and I love her, but she's been a spoiled, entitled brat since she was 16. Patricia drank deeply. David and I created a monster, gave her everything she wanted, never taught her about consequences, never made her work for anything. She told Daniel you were broke. Patricia laughed bitterly. We're not broke. We're in debt because we used to be stupid, but we've got it under control now. We told Jessica 2 years ago we wouldn't pay for her wedding because she needed to learn to handle her own finances. She told everyone we were poor. She's been using Daniel and me. Of course she has. That's what Jessica does. Patricia ordered a third glass of wine. Before Daniel, she dated a dentist for a year. Nice guy, successful, paid for everything. Expensive dinners, trips, jewelry. When he proposed with a ring that cost only $8,000 instead of the $15,000 she wanted, she broke up with him. My stomach turned. So she targeted Daniel. She targeted Daniel's mother, Patricia corrected. She knew you were a widow with life insurance money. She saw you as a resource. You knew this and you said nothing. Patricia's face showed genuine shame. I tried to warn Daniel once early in their relationship. Jessica found out and didn't speak to me for 6 months. I'm weak, Margaret. Just like Daniel is weak. We both know it. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the waves. For what it's worth, Patricia said finally, what you did at that airport, I wish I'd done something like that years ago. Set boundaries. Taught consequences. Maybe Jessica would be a better person. It's not too late, I said. Isn't it? She's your daughter. My son is 33 and I'm still trying to teach him. It's never too late. Patricia gave me her number. If you ever need a witness to Jessica's behavior, or if this goes legal, somehow call me. I'll tell the truth. After she left, I sat on that beach for another hour watching the ocean and thinking about patterns, about parents who enable, about children who never learn, about the courage it takes to stop the cycle. Days 4 through 7. Healing. The rest of the week was the most peaceful I'd had in years. I took a cooking class and learned to make authentic mole sauce. The instructor, a grandmother named Rosa, told me about her own difficult daughter-in-law. We laughed and cried and traded stories. I got a massage at the spa. The therapist said I was holding incredible tension in my shoulders and neck. You've been carrying heavy weight, she said. Not physical weight, emotional weight. She was right. I went snorkeling 3 more times, saw sea turtles and tropical fish, and felt like I was floating in another world. I read 3 books, Educated, finished it, Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. All of them about women finding themselves after loss. And every evening I sat on my terrace with a glass of wine, watched the sunset, and talked to Bob's photo. I did something crazy, honey, I said on day 4. I walked away from our son. Not forever, but for now. Was I wrong? I think you'd understand, I said on day 5. You always said we teach people how to treat us. I was teaching Daniel that he could treat me terribly and I'd still be there. I had to stop. I miss him, I said on day 6, but I don't miss who he became. I hope he figures it out, I said on day 7. I hope he finds his way back, not to me, to himself. Day 7. Departure. My last morning at Esperanza, I woke up early to watch the sunrise. The sky went from black to deep purple to pink to gold, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. At checkout, the manager asked, "Did you enjoy your stay, Senora Sullivan?" "It was perfect," I said. "Thank you." "Will you come back?" "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I'm glad I came." The taxi ride to the airport was quiet. The driver played soft music, and I watched Cabo pass by the hotels, the restaurants, the tourists, the locals going about their lives. At the airport, I checked in for my flight home. Economy this time. I didn't need first class. I didn't need to prove anything. As I waited at my gate, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Mom, it's Dan. Jessica threw my phone. I'm using a borrowed one. Can we talk when you get home? I have things I need to say. Things I should have said years ago. I understand if you don't want to, but I hope you'll give me a chance. I love you. I'm sorry. I stared at that text for a long time. Then I typed, I land at Denver at 8 p.m. I'll call you tomorrow. I didn't type, I love you. Not yet. Love without boundaries wasn't love. It was enabling. And I was done enabling. The plane took off carrying me home to Denver, to my little house in Lakewood, to my life as it was quiet, simple mine. I didn't know what would happen with Daniel. I didn't know if he'd leave Jessica, if he'd find his spine, if he'd ever become the man I knew he could be. But I knew one thing for certain. I'd taught him a lesson worth $12,000. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt like a good mother. End of part 2. What do you think I should do about Daniel? Should I give him another chance? Have you ever had to set hard boundaries with your own kids? Comment below and let me know what you'd do in my situation. And if you're loving this story, hit that subscribe button, because part 3 is where everything comes together. The conversation with Daniel, what happened with Jessica, and whether this family can ever heal. You won't want to miss it. Recap and final hook. In part 2, I left my son Daniel and his wife Jessica stranded at the Cabo airport after removing my $11,847 payment from their vacation booking. I spent 7 days in paradise at the Esperanza Resort while they stayed at a Motel 6. Now I'm heading home to Denver, and Daniel wants to talk. If you haven't watched parts 1 and 2, go back now, you need the full story. And for those of you who've been with me this whole journey, comment your city and tell me, would you give Daniel another chance? Because that's exactly what I'm trying to figure out. This is the final part of my story, the part where I find out if teaching my son a $12,000 lesson actually changed anything. The flight from Cabo to Denver felt longer than the flight down, even though it was the same 6 hours. Maybe because I was flying economy this time, middle seat between a businessman who snored and a college student who watched movies without headphones on full volume. Or maybe because I was flying toward uncertainty instead of away from it. I'd texted Daniel back. I land at Denver at 8 p.m. I'll call you tomorrow. His response came immediately. Thank you. I'll be waiting. 3 words that should have made me feel better, but just made me nervous. 8:47 p.m. Denver International Airport. I collected my bag, still just the one small carry-on, and walked through the same terminal where this had all started a week ago. Gate B47 looked exactly the same, but I felt completely different. My phone buzzed. Linda. You're home. Come straight to my house. I have wine and I need to hear everything. I smiled. Linda Chen, my rock. Give me 30 minutes. The drive from the airport to my house in Lakewood took 40 minutes in Friday night traffic. Denver looked gray and cold after Cabo's sunshine, but it was home. My little 2-bedroom house with Bob's chair by the window and the garden we'd planted together 30 years ago. I pulled into my driveway and saw flowers on the porch. 3 dozen roses this time, white and pink with a card that said Mom. I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. Love, Dan. I brought them inside and put them in water habit, then looked at Bob's photo on the mantel. I'm home, honey. Not sure I did the right thing, but I did something. Bob's photo smiled that steady smile, and I could almost hear his voice. Maggie loves sometimes doing something is better than doing nothing. 10:15 p.m. Linda's house. Linda had set up her living room like a war room. Wine cheese crackers and her laptop open to Google Maps showing Cabo. Tell me everything, she said, pouring me a very full glass of Pinot Noir. Start from the airport confrontation, and don't leave out a single detail. So I told her. All of it. The group chat exclusions, the lounge incident, Jessica's boarding gate outburst removing the payment on the plane, the scene at the Cabo airport, Patricia Monroe's revelations the week at Esperanza. By the end, Linda was standing and applauding. Maggie Sullivan, you magnificent woman. I'm so proud of you I could cry. I left my son at an airport in a foreign country with $300. You left a 33-year-old man who made terrible choices with the consequences of those choices. There's a difference. She refilled both our glasses. What does Daniel want to talk about? I don't know. He sent that text from a borrowed phone, said Jessica through his phone. Good. She's showing her true colors. Linda sat down. Maggie, real talk. What do you want to happen here? I thought about that. Really thought about it. I want my son back. But not the son who lets his wife abuse me. I want the Daniel I raised, the one with a spine, with values, with self-respect. And if that person doesn't exist anymore, then I have to accept that and move on. I can't keep enabling who he's become just because I miss who he was. Linda raised her glass. To boundaries. To boundaries, I echoed. We drank wine until midnight, and Linda told me about her own kids, her daughter in Seattle, who called every Sunday her son in Phoenix, who was going through a divorce. Normal family problems. Healthy family problems. You know what the difference is between your kids and Daniel? I asked. What your kids respect you. They might not always agree with you, but they respect you. Linda squeezed my hand. Daniel will get there. You just gave him the wake-up call he needed. I hoped she was right. Saturday morning, 9:47 a.m. I called Daniel at 10 a.m. like I'd promised. He answered on the first ring. Mom! His voice sounded rough, like he'd been crying or hadn't slept. Probably both. Hi, Daniel. Silence for a moment, then thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you would. I said I would. I know, but after everything, I wouldn't blame you if you never wanted to speak to me again. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where Bob and I had eaten breakfast for 30 years, where Daniel had done his homework as a kid, where I'd signed the credit card receipt for $11,847.23. Where are you? I asked. At my apartment. She's at her parents' place. We're taking a break. I heard. Patricia told me. You talked to Patricia. He sounded shocked. I ran into her at Esperanza. She and David have a timeshare in Cabo. They come every year. Did you know that? A long pause. No, Jess said they were broke. They're not broke, Daniel. They just stopped enabling Jessica 2 years ago. Something I should have done a long time ago. Mom, his voice cracked. I need to see you, to talk to you in person. Can we meet somewhere, anywhere you want? Your choice. I thought about inviting him to the house, but this wasn't a house conversation. This needed neutral ground. Stella's Coffee on Colfax, 2 o'clock this afternoon. I'll be there. Thank you, Mom. Really thank you. 2:00 p.m. Stella's Coffee House. I arrived 15 minutes early habit. Stella's was a cozy Denver institution, all exposed brick and mismatched furniture and the smell of fresh roasted coffee. Bob and I used to come here on Sunday mornings. I ordered a latte and sat in a leather armchair by the fireplace. Pulled out my book club book, but couldn't focus on the words. At exactly 2:00 p.m., the door opened and Daniel walked in. He looked terrible. And I don't say that to be cruel. He genuinely looked like he'd been through hell. Unshaven dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes like he'd lost 10 pounds in a week. His hair was messy, his eyes were red, and when he saw me, his face crumpled. He walked over and stood there awkwardly, like he didn't know if he was allowed to hug me. Sit down, honey, I said gently. He sat in the chair across from me and immediately started crying. Not quiet tears, full sobbing, the kind that draws stares from other coffee shop patrons. I let him cry, handed him napkins from the table, waited. Finally, he got control of himself. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's okay. Take your time. He wiped his face and took several deep breaths. Mom, I need to start by saying I'm sorry. Really, genuinely sorry. Not sorry I got caught or sorry there were consequences. Sorry for what I did. For what I let happen. For who I became. Okay. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Rachel Kim. She specializes in family dynamics. She said I need to be specific. That saying I'm sorry for everything isn't enough. So I wrote a list. He pulled out his phone, a new phone I noticed, and opened his notes app. Can I read it to you? Go ahead. Climax number 3, The Reckoning. Daniel took a breath and started reading. I'm sorry for not defending you at our engagement party when Jess arrived 2 hours late and didn't thank you. I'm sorry for letting you pay $15,000 for our wedding without contributing anything myself. I'm sorry for letting Jess seat you at table 8 instead of the family table at our wedding. I'm sorry for canceling our Thursday dinners and lying about why. I'm sorry for sitting away from you in the airport lounge that you paid for. I'm sorry for following Jess to different seats at the gate instead of sitting with you. I'm sorry for not speaking up when she insulted your cooking, your furniture, your life. I'm sorry for letting her exclude you from activities on a vacation you paid for. I'm sorry for staying silent when she said you didn't pay for the trip. I'm sorry for every time I chose peace with my wife over respect for my mother. I'm sorry for becoming someone Dad would be ashamed of." His voice broke on that last one. He set down his phone and looked at me with devastating honesty. "I failed you, Mom, and I failed Dad, and I failed myself." I felt tears in my own eyes now. "Yes, you did. I know why you did what you did at the airport. At first I was just shocked and scared, but then sitting in that Motel 6 with Jess screaming at me, I realized this was the first time in 2 years I'd actually faced consequences. The first time someone didn't just accept my behavior and enable it. Daniel, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Anything. Do you love Jessica?" He was quiet for a long moment. Other conversations buzzed around us, students studying, couples chatting, the espresso machine hissing. "I don't know anymore," he said finally. "I loved who I thought she was. Smart, ambitious, confident. But the person who said those things to you at the airport, the person who spent a week making you feel unwanted on a trip you paid for, I don't know if I ever really knew her." "When did it change?" "Honestly, I think it was always like this. I just didn't want to see it. Marcus tried to warn me. He showed me texts Jessica sent to her friends talking about you like you were an ATM machine. Talking about me like I was a paycheck. I ignored him because it was easier than admitting I'd made a mistake." "Are you divorcing her?" "Yes." He said it firmly, clearly. "I asked her to move out. She's at her parents' place, and her dad David actually called me yesterday. Said he respected what I was doing. Said Jessica needed to learn consequences." I thought about Patricia drunk on wine at the beach restaurant, admitting her own failures as a parent. "What happened after I left the airport?" I asked. Daniel laughed bitterly. "You really want to know?" "I really want to know." Daniel's story: after you left, Jess and I stood there arguing. Airport security asked us to leave the transfer area. We went outside and Jess called her parents, screaming at them to pay for a resort. Patricia said no, said we were adults and we'd figure it out. Jess lost it. Threw my phone against a concrete wall, that's why I had to borrow one. Started screaming that everyone had betrayed her, that you were evil, that I was weak, that her parents were selfish. I finally realized this wasn't about the vacation. This was about control, about always getting what she wanted. We took a taxi to a Motel 6 by the airport. Cost $68 a night. We had enough money for 3 nights. That first night, Jess wouldn't speak to me. Just sat on the bed, scrolling her phone, trying to find someone to blame, someone to fix this. The second night I asked her, "Do you even like my mother?" She said, and I quote, "Your mother is a pathetic old woman who should be grateful I let you talk to her at all." That's when I knew it was over. The third night, Marcus, you remember Marcus, my friend from college, he sent me money for flights home. Just Venmo'd me $800 and said, "Get yourself out of there." We flew back separately. I took an early morning flight. Jess took an evening one. We haven't spoken since we landed, except through lawyers. He paused, looking at his hands. "Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I broke something that might not be fixable, but I need you to know what you did at that airport saved me. You saved me from becoming someone completely unrecognizable, someone who would let his wife abuse his mother for the rest of your life." The conversation continues. I sat with that for a moment, watching my son, seeing the guilt and shame and genuine remorse on his face. "Daniel, I need to tell you something too. Something I should have said a long time ago." "Okay." "I enabled you. After your dad died, I made you my whole world. I clung to you in ways that weren't healthy. I accepted behavior I shouldn't have because I was so afraid of losing you that I lost myself instead." "Mom, no. Yes. Let me finish. When Jessica started excluding me, started making those little comments, I should have set boundaries immediately. I should have said, 'This isn't acceptable,' and stuck to it. Instead, I made excuses. I told myself you were just busy, she was just stressed things would get better. I enabled both of you. That doesn't excuse what I did. No, it doesn't. But it explains how we got here. We both made mistakes, Daniel. You became someone who prioritized the wrong things, and I became someone who accepted crumbs of attention because I was afraid of getting nothing." Daniel was crying again. "How do we fix this?" "We don't fix it. We rebuild it. Differently. Better. With boundaries and honesty and mutual respect." "What does that look like?" I thought about the conversations I'd had with Linda, with my therapist, Dr. Patel, with myself during those quiet evenings on the Esperanza Terrace. It looks like weekly coffee dates, like this. Neutral territory, no pressure. It looks like honest conversations even when they're uncomfortable. It looks like you continuing therapy and figuring out who you are outside of Jessica. And it looks like me continuing my own therapy and remembering I'm a person, not just a mother. Can we start over? We can start new. We can't erase what happened, but we can build something different from here. Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. His hand was cold and shaking. I love you, Mom. I never stopped loving you, even when I wasn't showing it. I squeezed his hand. I love you too, honey. But love without respect isn't enough. We need both. We'll get there, I promise. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we'll get there. We sat there for 3 hours. 3 hours of talking, really talking about everything. About Bob and how Daniel had never properly processed his father's death. About Jessica and how he'd been attracted to her confidence but mistaken control for strength. About money and boundaries and what it meant to be an adult child and an aging parent. It wasn't a perfect conversation. There were uncomfortable silences. There were more tears. There were moments when I wanted to just hug him and tell him everything was fine. But I didn't. Because everything wasn't fine yet. But it could be. With time and work and honesty, it could be. The next few months weren't easy. Healing never is. Week 2. The first coffee, Daniel came to Stella's the following Saturday. This time he looked better showered, shaved, wearing clean clothes. How was your week? I asked. Hard. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Cap Hill. It's small, but it's mine. Jess is fighting the divorce, saying I abandoned her in Mexico. You didn't abandon her. I did. Her lawyer says you're liable for emotional distress. I laughed. Good luck with that. Patricia already said she'd testify about Jessica's behavior if needed. We talked for an hour. Nothing heavy. Just checking in. By the end, it felt almost normal. Week 6. The therapy breakthrough. Dr. Kim helped me understand something, Daniel said over coffee. I was trying to recreate what you and Dad had, that solid, stable partnership. But I chose someone who was the opposite of you in every way. I think I was trying to prove I didn't need you anymore. Did you prove it? I proved I picked badly. He smiled sadly. Turns out I do need you. Just in a healthier way than before. Week 10. The work promotion. I got promoted, Daniel said, and he actually looked excited. Senior software engineer, $20,000 raise. Daniel, that's wonderful. First thing I did was pay Marcus back the money he sent me in Cabo. Second thing, I want to pay you back for the vacation. No. Mom. No, Daniel. That money is gone. I don't want it back. It bought me something more valuable than a vacation. What? It bought me self-respect. And it bought you a wake-up call. That's worth $12,000. Week 16. The Marcus dinner. Can I bring someone to coffee next week? Daniel asked. My heart sank. You're not dating already, are you? No, God, no. I meant Marcus. He really wants to apologize to you. Apologize for what? For not being more aggressive about warning me about Jessica. He feels guilty. Tell him he has nothing to feel guilty about. But yes, bring him. The following week, Marcus Thompson showed up with flowers and genuine contrition. Mrs. Sullivan, I should have tried harder to make Dan see what was happening. Marcus, you tried. He wasn't ready to listen. That's not your fault. We had a lovely coffee, the three of us, and I watched Daniel laugh, really laugh for the first time in months. August, Bob's death anniversary. 9 years since Bob died, and I stood at his grave on a warm August morning. I'd brought sunflowers, his favorite. Hey, honey, it's been quite a year. I sat on the bench near his headstone, the same bench where Daniel and I used to sit when he was little feeding ducks at the pond. Daniel's doing better. He's in therapy twice a week. The divorce is almost finalized. Jessica got the BMW, he didn't even fight for it. Said he wanted nothing from that marriage except lessons. A voice behind me, mind if I join you? Daniel stood there holding his own flowers, white roses. Hey, Mom, figured you'd be here. We sat together in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Daniel spoke. I've been reading Dad's journal, the one you showed me. There's an entry from about 6 months before he died. Oh, he wrote about me, about hoping I'd grow up to be strong enough to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Daniel's voice got thick. I failed that test, Mom. For 2 years, I failed it. But you're passing it now. Am I? You left a toxic marriage. You're in therapy. You're rebuilding your relationship with me based on honesty instead of obligation. You're doing the hard work. I put my hand on his shoulder. Your dad would be proud. I want to tell you something, Daniel said. Sarah from work asked me out. My stomach tightened. Oh? I said no. Told her I needed to figure out who I am before I date anyone. Told her to ask me again in a year. He looked at me. Dr. Kim says I need to be comfortable being alone before I can be healthy with someone else. Dr. Kim is very smart. She also says I should tell you when I'm proud of something instead of waiting for you to ask. So, I ran a 10K last week. First race I've done since college. Daniel, that's wonderful. And I'm thinking about taking some night classes, maybe get my master's degree. Not because I need it for work, but because I want to learn more. I felt tears in my eyes. Your dad would love that. We sat at Bob's grave for another hour, talking about the future instead of dwelling on the past. About Daniel's goals, my plans, the family we were slowly rebuilding. Present day, Thanksgiving. 6 months after Cabo, I'm hosting Thanksgiving at my house. First time in 2 years. Linda is here with her kids. Marcus is here. He's become a regular fixture in our lives. Daniel is here looking healthy and confident and more like himself than he has in years. We're setting the table when the doorbell rings. I'll get it, Daniel says. He comes back with Patricia and David Monroe. Mom, I invited Jess's parents. Hope that's okay. I look at Patricia, who's holding a pumpkin pie and looking nervous. Patricia, David, come in. Margaret, thank you for having us, Patricia says. We wanted to come because we're grateful for what you did, for teaching Jessica and us about consequences. How is Jessica, I ask, because I'm trying to be gracious. She's living in Phoenix, David says, working as a receptionist at a dental office. No more marketing, no more designer clothes, no more Instagram influencer dreams. She's learning to live within her means. She calls me every Sunday now, Patricia adds quietly. Actual conversations about her life, about learning to budget, about therapy. She's growing up, finally. I'm glad, I say, and I mean it. We sit down to dinner, 13 people around my table, the one Bob built 30 years ago. We hold hands, and I say grace, thanking God for family, for second chances, for the courage to set boundaries, and the grace to rebuild. During dessert, Daniel stands up. I want to say something. Oh no, public speeches make me nervous. 6 months ago, my mom did something that seemed crazy. She left Jess and me at an airport in Mexico with $300 and no vacation. People who hear the story think she was cruel. He looks at me and his eyes are clear and bright. But she wasn't cruel. She was brave. She taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned, that love without respect is worthless. That enabling someone isn't the same as helping them. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone face consequences. He raises his glass. Mom, you saved my life at that airport. You saved me from becoming someone I would have hated. You taught me what Dad tried to teach me, to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. So thank you. For loving me enough to let me fail, and for giving me the chance to try again. Everyone raises their glasses. I'm crying too hard to see clearly, but I raise mine too. To Maggie, Linda says, the bravest woman I know. To consequences, Marcus adds with a grin. To second chances, Patricia says quietly. To Mom, Daniel says. To the woman who taught me what strength really looks like. We drink and I look around my table at this strange, rebuilt family. Not perfect, not what I'd imagined, but real, honest, built on boundaries and respect instead of obligation and guilt. After dinner, Daniel helps me wash dishes just like he used to when he was little. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you forgive me? Really forgive me? I dry a plate carefully, thinking about my answer. I forgive who you were. I respect who you're becoming, and I have hope for who you'll be. I look at him. Is that enough? It's more than enough. He hugs me, and this time it's not a guilty hug or an obligatory hug. It's a real one. I love you, Mom. I love you too, honey. That night, after everyone leaves, I sit in Bob's chair by the window with a cup of tea. The house is quiet. The dishes are done. The leftover turkey is wrapped up in the fridge. I look at Bob's picture on the mantel. We did okay, didn't we, honey? Our boy found his way back. And in the window's reflection, I see myself smiling a real smile, not a sad one or a forced one. I'm 68 years old. I'm a widow. I live alone in a modest house in Lakewood, Colorado. I lost my son at an airport gate in Cabo San Lucas, and I found him again different, better, stronger on a bench at his father's grave. Some relationships break and stay broken. Some relationships break and heal wrong, full of scar tissue and resentment. But some, the rare ones, the precious ones, break open so they can finally grow right. Mine was the third kind, and all it cost was $11,847.23 and the courage to walk away. Best money I ever spent. So that's my story. From the airport gate confrontation to this Thanksgiving table. From being excluded and humiliated to being respected and loved. I want to leave you with something my therapist, Dr. Patel, told me. You cannot change people. You can only change what you accept. For 2 years, I accepted disrespect. I accepted exclusion. I accepted being treated as less than I was worth. And the moment I stopped accepting it, the moment I removed that credit card payment, everything changed. Not immediately, not easily, but it changed. If you're in a situation where someone is treating you badly, family, friend, spouse, anyone, please know you're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to walk away, even from people you love, especially from people you love. Because real love includes respect. Real love includes boundaries. Real love means holding people accountable while still believing they can be better. I didn't lose my son in Cabo. I found him. I found the son I'd raised, the one who'd been buried under 2 years of toxic marriage and misplaced loyalty. And if you're watching this feeling stuck in a similar situation, I want you to know, it's not too late. It's never too late to teach people how you deserve to be treated. You just have to be brave enough to follow through. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set hard boundaries with family? Have you ever walked away from someone you loved to save yourself? What happened? Comment below and share your story. Let's support each other. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I share stories every week about real women facing real problems and finding the courage to stand up for themselves. You're not alone in this. None of us are. Thank you for listening to my story. From my family to yours, may you always know your worth. And may you always have the courage to walk away from anything that makes you forget it. This is Margaret Sullivan signing off. Remember, love yourself enough to set boundaries, respect yourself enough to enforce them, and trust yourself enough to know when it's time to walk away. See you in the next video.